Open your fridge tonight, lean in, and smell the container at the back. The one you've been avoiding. Your face does something before you decide anything. The upper lip lifts, the nostrils narrow, the head pulls back about 10 centimeters. That whole sequence takes under a second, faster than you can name the smell, faster than you can read the date printed on the lid. You didn't check anything. You didn't reason. Something in your skull looked at a molecule and filed an emergency report. Now here's the strange part. That same expression, that exact face, is the one you make when somebody tells you about a politician taking bribes. Same muscles. Same word for it in English, disgusting. A rotting chicken thigh and a moral betrayal are getting processed by overlapping machinery. And the machinery is older than the morality. Bacteria, blowflies, corpses, and a very small worm. That's where this goes. Start with the physics of the problem. A dead animal in warm air doesn't stay food for long. Within hours, the bacteria that lived quietly in its gut stop being contained and start eating outward. And as they eat, they excrete gases. Two of the loudest are putrescine and cadaverine. Those are the actual chemical names, given in 1885 by the German physician Ludwig Brieger, who was not feeling poetic that day. Your nose detects some sulfur compounds at concentrations in the parts per billion. For comparison, that's roughly 1 drop in an Olympic swimming pool, and you'll catch it across a room. So your nose is a chemical detector of absurd sensitivity, pointed at exactly one category of danger. Except sensitivity alone doesn't explain the panic. Smoke is dangerous too, and smoke doesn't make you gag. Petrol is toxic, and plenty of people quite like the smell. Rock gets a full-body veto that nothing else gets. And the reason isn't the poison in the meat, it's what's living in it. Here's the thing about a spoiled carcass. The toxins are almost the smaller problem. The real threat is biological, the bacteria themselves, plus everything that colonizes a body once the immune system stops defending it. Clostridium botulinum, growing in low oxygen conditions, produces one of the most lethal substances known. The estimated human lethal dose is measured in nanograms per kilogram. And crucially, none of that shows on the outside. Meat can be swarming and look completely fine, which is the design constraint your ancestors were stuck with. You cannot see bacteria. You cannot see a parasite egg. You've got no microscope until Antony van Leeuwenhoek starts grinding lenses in Delft in the 1670s. And the germ theory of disease doesn't get properly established until Pasteur and Koch in the 1860s and 1870s. So for the several 100,000 years before that, the only available detector for invisible biological contamination was a nose that had learned to hate the smell of bacterial metabolism. Your disgust isn't a reaction to death. It's a reaction to something else's dinner already being underway. And once you frame it that way, a strange asymmetry shows up in what humans will and won't eat. Because we eat rot constantly, cheese is controlled bacterial decay, yogurt is bacterial decay, beer, bread, soy sauce, kimchi, prosciutto, all of it is microbial activity we've decided to allow. Some Icelandic communities eat hakal, shark buried and fermented for months, which smells strongly of ammonia and which visitors routinely cannot swallow. The islanders eat it at Christmas. So disgust isn't a fixed chemical law, it's tuned by exposure. The anthropologist Val Curtis, at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, ran a survey through the BBC in the early 2000s that collected disgust ratings from over 40,000 people across dozens of countries, and the pattern that came back was consistent. The images people found most repulsive were overwhelmingly ones carrying disease risk, bodily fluids, wounds, things crawling. Not the abstract stuff, the infectious stuff. Curtis's reading, and it's an interpretation rather than a settled fact, is that disgust is essentially a behavioral immune system. Your actual immune system fights pathogens after they're inside you, at real metabolic cost. Disgust fights them at the door, for free. The catch is that a door guard who's never been trained on hakal will refuse it forever. Now watch what happens when the guard gets it wrong. Consider the parasite side of the ledger, because that's where the pressure was genuinely brutal. Take Taenia solium, the pork tapeworm. Its life cycle runs through pigs and humans, and the adult worm in the human intestine can reach several meters. Eat undercooked pork, carrying the larvae, and you host the adult. Ingest the eggs instead, usually from contaminated fecal matter on food or hands, and the larvae go somewhere far worse. Muscle tissue, the eye, the brain. That last one is neurocysticercosis. and the World Health Organization lists it as a leading preventable cause of epilepsy worldwide, associated with tens of thousands of deaths a year, even now. And here's the sting. The eggs have no smell. None. The nose that can catch cadaverine across a room is completely blind to the thing that puts cysts in your brain. So the alarm system that feels so precise is actually running on a crude proxy. It doesn't detect pathogens. It detects the smell of decomposition and assumes pathogens are nearby, which was a good bet most of the time and a useless one exactly when it mattered most. That's why cultures built rules instead: hand washing, separating waste from water, not eating the animal that died on its own. Rules covering the gap the nose couldn't see. Rules about clean and unclean, in other words, which is where this stops being about food at all, because the same word keeps escaping its cage. We say a person is filthy. We say a crime stinks. We say we want to wash our hands of something, and in one of the more entertaining findings in psychology, people asked to recall their own bad behavior, show a measurable preference for cleaning products, hand wipes, soap over other free items. That result comes from Chenbo Zhong and Katie Liljenquist, published in Science in 2006. It's since become one of the more debated effects in the field, with replication attempts giving mixed results, so treat it as a suggestive finding rather than a law. But the linguistic overlap is not debatable. It shows up across unrelated language families. The leading explanation is that moral disgust is borrowed hardware. Contamination avoidance was already there, an old, fast, involuntary system for marking a thing as do not touch, do not approach, do not let it near the group. When human societies got complex enough to need a way of marking a person that way, evolution didn't build a second system. It repurposed the first one, which is why moral outrage feels physical. It's not a metaphor. You are running a cheetah through a subroutine designed for a rotting carcass. And that borrowing has a cost nobody signed off on, because a system that marks things as untouchable cannot tell the difference between a spoiled carcass and a sick neighbor. During epidemics, the same reflex that kept people away from contaminated water kept them away from the infected, and then from anyone who resembled the infected foreigners: the poor, the visibly ill, the disfigured. Leprosy colonies. Quarantine districts. The historian's record of the Black Death across Europe from 1347 includes waves of violence against Jewish communities accused of poisoning wells, which is disgust, logic wearing an explanation. That doesn't mean disgust caused the pogroms. Human cruelty has plenty of engines. It means the reflex was available, and it was easy, and it felt like moral clarity from the inside. That's the twist that was sitting in your fridge the whole time. The lip curl isn't a small thing your face does. It's the oldest opinion you have, and it arrives before you do. So the next time your body vetoes something a full second before your mind catches up, notice what actually happened. A few molecules of bacterial waste crossed 20 centimeters of kitchen air and hit a receptor tuned by 100,000 generations of ancestors who never once knew why the meat was dangerous. They only knew to pull back. And they lived. And here you are, standing in the light of an open fridge, making the face of someone who has just met a great injustice over a container of soup.